What's going on, everybody? Emmett Ferguson here, and this is the video review of episode 3 of Undercover Boss season 1. Or, sorry, Undercover Billionaire season 1. So, Undercover Billionaire, it's a show by Discovery where they took a billionaire, Glenn Stearns, who, owns a major lending company, financial lending company, and puts him into a random town. Actually, I don't think it's random, but in a little small town with $100 in a pickup truck, and basically, they ask him to figure out how he's going to turn that $100 into $1 million,
In
and
90 days.
in 90 days, yeah. And real quickly, you can see how it transforms in just the first 3 episodes. Now, there's obviously a lot of questions, that pop up on your mind, like, oh, well, how did he get this signed, and how did he get this approved, and how did he do all these things without having a name? Obviously, a bank probably wouldn't lend money to a guy without any sort of name, so obviously he had to be able to prove something that he could make something happen. Right? He's not going to use a fake name to apply for a bank, so somebody had to do something. But with that aside, I think one of the big interesting things about the show is it's not like exact step by step how to do each of these individual things, but on that big picture side of it, of how quickly you ramp up and change your mindset from trying to sell an item for $1 a piece to start the concept of creating $1 million business, how to leverage different product streams in that $1 million business, how to get people aligned with your vision, and even if you're starting from nowhere, I think there's some interesting levels of this show that you can see real quickly. There's the level of trying to live off of $100 and a pickup truck. That's basically homeless or less, right? And when I say less, I'm not saying having a pickup truck is less than being homeless, but it's financially, if you're homeless and you don't even have a truck, that could be, a similar situation. Now, how do you get that truck? That's a whole different story, but, learning what he did in this video, in the show, to get up and running, selling what was already out there and available, coming up with the idea of flipping a house, going into business, taking any job he could get, doing any job he could get, and trying to make some money to make that happen. I think that just the first 2 episodes shows what it takes to get from, let's say, zero, like on a scale of 0 to 1 million, to get from, if you're just trying to make like 30,000, what you could do to start getting to 30,000, right? The skills that you need to go from $100 in pickup truck to $30,000 living in a small town, and those are the things that could possibly happen. But here's the thing: is that he needs to do this in 90 days. He needs to go from $100 in pickup truck to $1 million in 90 days. So that skill set isn't going to be selling and working as an employee unless you're literally trying to teach, unless you get hired on as a consultant business owner. But if you're hired on as an employee to any business, the chances of them eventually seeing you as like a recognized consultant, someone that tells them how to grow their business, is very unlikely. And he quickly goes from that make a living day by day mentality, trying to make his first couple dollars on the streets, to how do you make your $10,000, how do you make your $30,000, how do you make your and transform that into $1 million. And he does that real quickly, and you can't do it without people. You might think like, oh, I could just try to flip these things and do this and do that, but at the end of the day, you need office space, you need ideas, you need good leadership, you need to overcome the challenges as well. Like, your first idea might not be practicable for anybody, but what do you do with that? What do you do when you come up across similar obstacles? And with those lessons, I think some of the biggest takeaways are not so much like how do you do every individual step, right? If you want to flip a house, if you want to flip a car, if you want to, anything that requires some sort of paperwork or anything, that's one step of the process, but that's a very small part of the process, right? Yes, they can say yes or no. And it's not like anybody could just go to the bank and say, "Hey, I need a loan to flip this house." Right? You gotta show some documentation. But if you can figure that out, then you can figure out the rest, right? And overcome that one little obstacle is just such a small part of this whole show. And I think it's a great show for anyone to watch, not to learn how to flip a house. I don't think that's the whole premise of the show. I think it's literally how it's more so about how you can move to a place where nobody knows you, you barely have any money, and to start building that up. And I think most of the people that are watching the show are not starting from homeless, which means that your starting point is slightly above where he's at that moment. Now, here's where you really got to build. It's not the how-tos and individual stuff that I think is helpful. I think what's really interesting about this business, this show, and the business that Glenn Stearns is building is that the leadership and management abilities that he demonstrates as he's going through the show, how he interacts with people, how he gets them on board, how he handles negotiations and gets deals made real quickly. I think those are some of the things that you can really take away that very much demonstrate a lot of what's going on in the show. And obviously, when you've got a TV show, people are always working harder. People are more likely to stick to it. I imagine that that the fact that there's cameras following you around, even if it's a small crew, shows something that you got a story worth listening to. And although this show's called Undercover Billionaire, I think there's another show called Undercover Boss. I think this is an in between, like Undercover Startup Expert, right? Undercover Startup Expert. And I think there's a lot of very interesting underlying messages about money on this show too, because there's that negotiation that factors in. There's that stress component of not having a lot of money that gets you going, and also how do you even come up with the idea of selling tires? Like it gives you a lot of very practical tools, starting from zero, episode 1, episode 2, or starting from, let's say, 100. Let's call it 2,000, starting from $2,000 to $1 million. I calculated the cost of the truck plus $100 plus maybe a camera crew or something. How do you pay a camera person? Pay a camera person $100 to follow you around for a couple days, per day. It's a couple grand or maybe a grand or two. Obviously, Discovery, they're selling to Discovery, so they probably use the higher price camera, but the lessons that are gained from the show, it's absolutely amazing how he does it. And I hope not too much. Just coming from an audience perspective and someone who thinks this is an interesting concept, is I hope that as minimal amount of it is scripted as possible. Like, I hope that, because there's a lot of reality TV out there, and the reality shows, as we all know, a lot of it's scripted, a lot of it's planned out. And although I'm sure there are certain parts of it that were made easier, there are people that are going to say, oh, well, he, knew about this idea, so, he didn't really have to start from scratch. But I think the reality is most of us, if we're over the age of 30, or if we're over the age of even 20, that you're really not starting from scratch. You've probably got a bigger phone book of people to connect with. You've got more ideas. You've got community of people that you can work with to end up building a business if you so desire. So, with that said, amazing show for entrepreneurs. If you want to see how people build a business from scratch, if you want to learn some leadership principles, or if you just want to see a billionaire struggle for a couple days, living in a truck, eating from a soup kitchen, and all these other things. So so many great things to learn from this show, and I while I don't think it's one of those things where if he can do it, you can do it, because the skills that he has, his confidence and ability in being able to, bring his entire vision to life in 90 days with a camera crew is not a skill that happens overnight, right? Most people, they need to build up their personal mindset, and that's why mindset coaching, self-confidence, personal development, the self-help, that business is so big and important, is because before you can go do those big things, you got to be able to manage yourself. And in order to feel confident enough to lead a team, to do all that type of stuff, to accept that it is a possibility, to have the belief and understanding that it can happen, and with a time limit like 90 days, is a hurdle that may be the biggest hurdle for people. And it's not so much the how do you do it, what's the next step, what's the step after that, because he gives you a lot of great tools. I mean, from the beginning, you're going to see things like, where you can post and look for jobs, what type of jobs to look for, what type of opportunities. And from there, it goes bigger, how to get that first office, what resources are there to help you, and how to connect with other entrepreneurs and find opportunities. So some amazing lessons in this show. And I think the biggest takeaway from episode 3 is to go big and build a team. So with that, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to stay tuned for the next couple of reviews, and be sure to check out the show. In the link in the description below, you have an opportunity to be able to check this show out on Amazon. That's on Amazon Prime right now. And it's a Discovery show, but they put it on Amazon Prime. Season 1 is in full, so you don't have to wait at all in between episodes. And, things are getting serious with this. We're starting to talk much bigger money, much bigger projects here. In the first episodes, it's just like, oh, okay, so how do I make my first couple dollars, right? And there's so many ways that you can do that. But now it's about how do you start scaling that up? How do you make that much, much more in a shorter amount of time? And actually, how do you even multiply it? Like flipping a house with spending minimal amounts of money and the bank's money, and then taking all the rest that you sell it for as a profit. I mean, that's a huge skill in itself. It'd be great to know how he did that, but to do it in 90 days, I think, is a record-breaking task, and most people have more time to do that. So check that out. Link in the description below. I think Amazon has a pretty good refund policy, so you can check out like episode 1 or 2, and if you don't like it, or 3, if you don't like it, return it. I don't know what the refund policy is on this. Don't quote me on that. I don't know about their digital products. I'll definitely look at it according to their vendor and everything, but link in the description below. Check that out. Amazing video. Amazing show so far. And have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching this review.